All right. Back live again for the first time in a while. Man, that really hurt. Stubbed my toe like 10 seconds before I pressed that go live button. Oh, man. Well, we'll see if anyone actually shows up to this one. Hopefully, that'd be great. But, as usual, it's really just about the VOD video on demand, Um, but yeah, here I am. It's been a while. My wife and I moved up to a different city in the metro area of the city that we live in, and as you can see, the box in the background there of movie posters and random stuff. But it's a work in progress, so here we are. Um, well, obviously, it's been a little bit, so I want to talk a little bit about what happened in the video before. This was the plot of Conquerors that I wrote up as an adventure series that I really want to publish and make an actual thing out of. So the last two sessions, they've been getting into this goblin forest set into a mountain, like inside of the mountain itself. They got in after some crazy chicanery and throwing some flasks in some tiny holes and burning a bunch of goblins to death. They then got into a room with a whole bunch of drunken goblins and fought them pretty well, kind of came up with more of a normal strategy for them, or what was going to turn into a more normal strategy for them, since they have a number of people who can attack at range, things like that. So they took out most of those goblins, but some of them actually managed to run away. So they were in a large rectangular room, and there was a door off to the east and the door off to the north. And a couple ran through the door to the north, but the door on the east was locked. And they polished off the goblins, and they looked into the path to the north and saw a long, black, dark hallway, and realized that they didn't want to go up that way. It was scary, or something to that effect. And so they decided to go through the east door. The east door is very ornately carved. They can see kind of a motif of goblins and war of some kind. So they managed to kick in the door to the east. Literally, Sunshine just puts her boot to it and takes it out. And they see an altar room, a chapel. So there's two rows of pews that can be used as cover, an altar that's set up with three different religious symbologies on it, and then three goblins. One clearly a kind of head priest in black and red robes, and then one on each side of him in a little bit less ostentatious but still red robes. I designed these a little bit to be kind of a, they're priests, they're divine magic users, but they're going to use some things that don't exist in normal D&D. So the acolytes have two particular spells that we care about, and that's invisibility, which everyone knows, of course, and protection from humans. So not protection from good and evil. I don't care about outsiders. I care about humanoids. So they cast protection from humans and invisibility on the head priest. So the head priest just suddenly disappears. And that was the top of the round. And the acolytes duck under cover. Unfortunately, I should have made this room bigger. I originally designed it small because I didn't want it to be a big combat area. And for the size of this place, it just didn't make a lot of sense for this chapel to be huge. The problem is what it resulted in was the PCs just running forward, immediately being able to reveal the goblins. And then at that point, any attempt at hiding was kind of done. And so Matt with his water whip now, and actually I think just Matt just rushes in, sees both of them. If you know someone's hiding and they're in this general area, well, go into that general area and they're not hiding anymore. So he found them, and just he destroyed them, both just very, very dead. And naturally, that got rid of the invisibility and the protection from humans. So, just kind of disappointing. And then mopping up the priest was no real big deal. He had some cool spells. I think he threw out some sort of acid spell that hit somebody for a little bit, but not that much. And they pretty much just decimated the encounter. But between that and the previous room, they were running a little low on spells and on hit points, so they decided to take a short rest, which not a huge deal, believe it or not, because of what was happening in the north room. And that's going to come up more in I think next session, or maybe the session. Yeah, no, next session. But the room to the north contains the boss of these goblins. What they're about to find out very shortly after this is that there are also bugbears in this place. And there is a story behind that. I've never had any group try to find out what that story was. I never really make it too terrifically obvious. Oh, there's goblins, there's bugbears. Everybody knows they interact. Meh. It's not terrifically important either. It doesn't matter that much what's going on here. And that's fine. Sometimes we design things for our games and for our dungeons that are for us because we think it's cool. Originally when I ran this, and I've pretty much gotten rid of this at this point, the goblins all have these differently colored rags on them. So there was some that were green, some were blue, some were red, and they're all different factions within the goblins. I quickly realized that players don't care, and neither do I. I just wasn't keeping track of it well enough. This time around, I did do a little bit with that, where they all have these green rags on them, and then later on, we'll see a group that has blue rags on them, and that's what will, possibly tip them off that there's more to these goblins than there appears. But the whole idea really is to make dungeons interesting for you. If you, the person designing something, don't think it's cool and interesting and special, then why do your players? Why would they care if you don't? Make interesting things, make things that interest you. And originally when I designed this, I thought it was super interesting that this goblin boss and bugbear chief were meeting, and that's what was really starting this whole thing. But so the goblins that rushed north interrupted the boss, but he had to finish the meeting. He said that was much more important than some rowdy people, dealing, what are they going to do? Come in here? The traps will handle them, which they don't. Surprise, surprise. But that'll come up next session. So they short rest in here, and they decide to head on. And out of the chapel, there's the door that they came in through, heading into the big room, with the other way into the boss's chambers. And then there's another door near the altar. First, they go up to the altar. They realize on there are these three symbologies. So there is a crossed sword and axe. But the sword is very short, so that it's kind of just a little symbol. It's not a huge, sword and axe. It's like sword and axe. There is a white, a skull that has been painted with white paint. And they notice on the skull that there are 3 pairs of ears on the sides. And they have these long bones growing out of them. And I'm trying to remember if any of them actually made the check to find out. I don't think so. To determine that these are elven ears. This is an elf skull dipped in white paint. And then there is another head kind of constructed of leaves and ferns. It kind of looks like a goblin head. And they Sunshine makes a religion check and determines that she knows a little bit about these three symbols. She recognizes the symbol of I should have written this down, but the hobgoblin god of rulership and law, and then the I believe Hrugek, the bugbear god of alertness and sloth, and then some sort of representation of old goblin gods, like old goblin gods. And then on the altar also is this massive book. It looks like what you would think of as a Bible in a church, where it's on the altar and it's huge and open, and written in fine calligraphy with gold edged and beautiful illumination. And they see all of this and realize that the Bible could have important information. So far, every group that I've introduced that to has taken it. Thank God. It's not vital, obviously, but it really is the way to get my players into more of the deep lore that I'm kind of going with this, and to kind of guide their path possibly onward. So they take that, and then Matt decided to destroy the altar. I think he wanted to set it on fire. But Sunshine was not a fan, because destroying god altars is a good way to piss off said gods, and she's not wrong. But I don't remember exactly if they decided to actually do it or not do it, but there's a healthy discussion there. And I think that's fine, especially when it can come out in character. There's a little bit of, hey, I really want to do this. Hey, I really don't. This is a bad idea. One of the things that I do forbid my players from is using any effect on another player that can change their mind. If you want to convince a player of something, you need to convince that player of it. There's no, I'm going to cast Charm Person, or something like that. Unless it's suitably dramatic and both agree to it. I have had it happen once in the past, where there was I don't remember, some sort of devil, something like that, and he promised one of them that he could do something good for them. And so one of the characters accepted a contract, and the other one said, no, I'm going to cast Hold Person on him, so he can't. And I said, before, I'm not normally cool with that, but this is obviously a big dramatic moment. Are you comfortable with him casting Hold Person with a dexterity opposed check to see if he can do it fast enough or something like that? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay, cool, perfect. And they did that, and they actually ended up failing. So, he accepts the contract, and just as he's finishing casting the spell, he says, I accept this contract. And then it's this, this gorgeous moment. And I think that's a great way of allowing your characters to have those dramatic beats where the players are like, oh man, that's so cool. This is like in that movie that one time. Because that's what everyone says all the time, is that movie that one time. Hydrate a little bit. But so I don't normally let players do things like that. And so if they wanted to convince someone to not desecrate this altar, they would have to do that. They would have to convince them to not desecrate the altar. I don't remember exactly, but I think I want to say that he ended up destroying it in some way, like destroying it with an axe or something like that, not setting it on fire. So they head onward. They see that other door. and they had to go into a small hallway, maybe 15 feet long, 5 feet wide, nothing crazy. And on the other side, they see another door. Luckily, and so far they have been. Actually, I'm trying to remember. I don't think they did investigate. So far, I believe they have been investigating for traps and things like that. And I think this one they did as well. And so they investigated for traps. They notice that it's locked, but they don't notice that there's a trap on it. And then they go to unlock it, and they fumble. They roll a 1. Whoops. Even if they hadn't rolled a 1, this is one of my more elegant traps that I think is really cool. If you miss unlocking the door, a little bell goes out on the other side that alerts the inhabitants that you're there. Nothing else. If you notice the trap is there, you probably notice that. If you don't notice the trap is there, then you just go to unlock the door. So the best thing to do for this door is either smash it in, providing no surprise to either party, or notice that the trap is there and then succeed. They didn't. They did not notice the trap was there, and they fumbled. And so the 2 bugbears on the other side were fully prepared. And so they get a surprise round. The bugbears smash into the door, breaking it down. And Smalls, I believe, was the one unlocking the door. It was either Smalls or Taco. And so the bugbears come through, they destroy the door, doing a ton of damage, knock that person out. And then Sunshine rolls high on initiative and immediately steps into that space and gets into the room to try and stop these bugbears from being able to, to get in into this hallway. And so, unfortunately, she doesn't account for the fact that bugbears are incredibly strong, hit pretty hard and pretty accurately. And I think in one round, they just, boom, take her out immediately. Party does fine. Sunshine is unconscious. I think they might have cure wounds her, or healing word or something like that, and got through. But they do end up dealing okay with the 2 bugbears. So they come into a cavern room, and at this point, they're seeing that this room is not carved like the other ones are. The other ones, clearly someone had gone in with tools and tooled out the inside of these rooms. This room is much more natural. You can see stalactites on the ceiling. Everything is, much more of this is a naturally occurring cave, and we're just kind of dealing with it. You see a table with a couple chairs. They see some bedding, and they see what is clearly some sort of throne, a black iron throne. And beside it is a lever. And so Smalls immediately goes down to sit on said lever. And Matt goes looking around the room, and Taco starts scouting ahead. And no, Sunshine goes scouting ahead because she has dark vision. Or low light vision, whatever. And low light vision is a thing from 3.5. It's now dark vision, right? So she goes scouting ahead, and she sees these chickens that look like they have scales, and their eyes are red and glow in the darkness. And so she starts running back towards the party, but at this point, they've had some time to look around. And they see the lever on the side of the throne. They end up pulling the lever, and they all hear a ka-chunk. Nothing else, really. They look around a little bit. They find that there is now a hole underneath the throne. and they can't see into the hole. It's very dark. One of them decides to throw like a lit torch down there or something like that. They hear it hit the bottom. They hear a clatter, and then they realize that there's some sort of darkness spell over this hole. They're talking for a while, trying to figure out, do I want to go in there? Do we want to put our hand in? Maybe Mike's doing a Tomb of Horrors, and it's an orb of destruction, orb of disintegration. Really, I can't remember the name. It's such a classic D&D item, and I can't remember right now. Man, I'm having a day. I apologize. But yeah, so they're debating, they're thinking. Eventually, one of them just says, "Fine, I stick my hand in," and ruffles around in there and finds a potion and a bag and I want to say a little wand, like a little short wand. And they look over the magic items. They taste the potion. It's a potion of healing. It's 2d4 plus 2. Nothing crazy. The bag is in fact a bag of holding. And then the wand is the classic minor magic item from Xanathar's Guide to Everything, the Wand of Conducting. And by conducting with this wand, you can make the sound of an instrument at a normal volume. It can't get too loud, it can't get too soft, but just make the sound of an instrument. Nothing crazy. I love minor magic items like this, especially early in a campaign, because it typically is going to be something that sits on a character sheet. They're not going to think about it. And I think I talked about this in a previous video as well, but I love the idea that you have this thing and later on you are in a desperate moment and you remember you have it and you go, wait a minute, this is the thing we're looking for. This is the thing that solves our plan. Because sometimes you just need something to solve the plan. So they find this treasure. A person comes back, tells them about the demon chickens. They're like, oh, hell no, we're not going that way. And they go back to the big room and they say, okay, whoever's in that room down that dark hallway, they're going to have to come out eventually. And so what we're going to do is we're going to set a fire in here. We're going to set all of the boxes in here on fire. We're going to close all the doors. And that's going to create this huge fire. And then when they finally open the doors, there's going to be a backdraft and burn all of them out. And then they go out into the entrance area where they saw the scaffolding that they'd burned down and wait. And eventually the goblin boss comes and opens the door. They hear a great whoosh as the fire is ripped out into the other hallway. And they open their door and it's initiative. Pretty classic. Really great ideas for my players this time. I think, there was a lot of talk. There was a lot of chatter. There was a lot of, oh my God, what do we do about this? What do we do about that? Nothing wrong with that. That's playing the game. The game of Dungeons and Dragons is a game of collaboration and whatever that means. People are not so simple as to always be in agreement. So sometimes you just have to say, hey, we're going to disagree about this. We're going to come up with something. And there you go. Perfectly fine session. It was a great little part of this dungeon. Next time, we're going to deal with the big boss fight. The goblin boss has some interesting stuff that I want to talk about. There's some really bad rolls. And then they're going to deal with the demon chickens. If you think you know what those demon chickens are, let me know in the comments. I think you're probably right. Most people who've played this game before know what a demon chicken is, or at least can figure it out. Well, pretty short stream this week, kind of getting back in the swing of things. I think the plan is going to be Wednesdays from now on. I think Wednesday is a little bit better day of the week, hopefully, to do these. So that is all for now. Office hours are closed. Hopefully next week we'll have some people online and some people that actually react to what I'm saying. But as we all know, this is about the video on demand and getting me making videos. That's the important part. So good night.